Hello everybody and welcome back to Robert's Reviews. Today I have an interesting video, and this is a Robert's Thoughts episode, so it's not edited, it's just me talking to you guys and discussing kind of. And this is one that I really do want some things in the comments, okay? So like, throughout the video, if you have an interesting thought, put it in the comments. I want to know, okay? It's an ongoing conversation. I think this video could have a part 2 at some point in the future. Especially after I have comments to to discuss about. But I'm just going to jump into it. Today we're going to be talking about how educational are educational movies and what qualifies an educational movie, right? And I think that there are two different genres. And I plan to talk a little bit about both, but we have just regular biopics / historical movies or educational movies, and then there's documentaries, right, which are very different in terms of their style and the way that they're supposed to teach, at very least. And I do want to start talking about some of the biopics / films that I've watched in the past 6 months that are deemed educational, right, with a question mark, really. It's like, educational, kind of? And I want to start with The Big Short. And The Big Short was a film, I think it was early 2000s that it came out. Maybe it was actually 2012-ish. I'm not sure. It was in the 2000s. It had Steve Carell in it, and I think it had Christian Bale in it, and Brad Pitt. And it was okay. I didn't really like it as much as most other people, but I think it was fine. And the interesting thing about this movie in particular, and I don't know if I like this style or not, but it did break the fourth wall many times, which I do like. I do like when like a director feels comfortable enough to do that in his movies and still feel like he's going to be able to sell the movie. That's great. The thing that I find the most interesting about this movie is that it tells you when it changed something, right? So when they're watching the movie and you're watching this, stockbroker meeting, they'll end the meeting and be like, by the way, this didn't really happen, but like we kind of wanted to be put here anyway. Just know that it didn't actually happen in real life. And it's like, okay, but then why didn't you just show us the real way? If the point of the movie is to entertain and to educate, then I think that they should have just shown the real thing. No matter how boring it is, that's the whole point of an educational movie, is to teach you. And while I understand that they did say, hey, this is not how it actually went down. I get that. That's kind of cool. I appreciate that. But at the same time, then why show it? If it's that, it wasn't even that important of a change. And none of these were that important, I think. And I just felt like it kind of ruined the whole point of an educational movie. So in terms of the educationalness of The Big Short, I don't think it was as educational as it could have been, but it definitely did help. I mean, I learned a lot about the stock crash of, what was it, 2008? So yeah, the movie must have come out after that. But it was, I don't know, it didn't feel like an educational movie, which is cool, because some educational movies are like that, where they aren't, they don't feel educational. And I think that's really, really cool. The next one I want to talk about, let's talk about Vice. Vice is a movie that also has Steve Carell in it, and has Christian Bale in it. Okay, well, that's interesting. And I love Christian Bale, for one. But I think that this movie is one of the interesting movies because it takes a side, right? Where, like, it's talking about this vice president, Dick Cheney, and how he is kind of corrupt and how he became, a U.S. leader. And that's cool. I like the idea of doing that. And I don't know to what extent this movie is real. I don't know. Because it doesn't really outwardly tell you, which is cool, but, like, also not helpful in terms of the educational part. And what I do find interesting, in particular, is that it took a side, right? Where, after watching the movie, I was like, wow, Dick Cheney was kind of really mean and an awful person, and, like, wasn't very good for our U.S. system. And, like, that's an interesting thing, because most educational things are, they try not to take a side, right? Which teachers are, like, not supposed to, at least in New York City, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, they're not supposed to push you to a different side of, like, politics, right? And that's the same thing with, like, a movie, I think, should not take a side unless it outwardly says it's going to take a side, right? Because this movie was just a regular movie for me, and then I was like, oh wow, they really don't like Dick Cheney here. They're kind of portraying him as kind of a jerk. And I don't know anything about Dick Cheney besides that movie, so I think it can definitely color some opinions, which a lot of movies do that on purpose. So I am interested to see how real that is. If any of you guys know anything about Dick Cheney in terms of if he really was just an awful person, Let me know in the comments below. The next one I want to talk about, I didn't write this one down, but I just thought about it, and I thought maybe I'd share, is J. Edgar. This is a Leonardo DiCaprio movie, and it had James D'Arcy in it. It was a pretty, bad film, especially coming from DiCaprio and Darcy here. D'Arcy. But, this movie follows J. Edgar Hoover, as he becomes, whatever, I think it was, Secretary of Defense or whatever. I don't know. I don't remember. It was a bad movie. I think that this one's really interesting because it also paints a negative picture, but also, in a good way. It's complicated. But, this movie didn't feel educational at all, and honestly, I wouldn't take anything from this film for granted, because I think if it's a bad movie, that just makes your mind think that it's not educational. Which, I don't know if that's true. Let me know in the comments below. If it's bad, does that mean it's not educational? Which shouldn't be true, but also, the worse a movie is, the less I credit it with teaching me. No matter how real it is. If the movie's bad, I'm less likely to remember it anyway. I think that making a movie good and educational is important. If you want to make an educational movie, it has to be interesting and good to be educational. Because if you watch a bad movie, you're not going to remember it. So I think that is really interesting. I apologize for this background noise. I think there's street cleaning going outside, or maybe it's a lawnmower. So I apologize. Let's talk about another one, The Social Network. This one is it's a really good movie. A really, really good movie. I like this movie a lot. But there's an issue here, right? It is outwardly known that not everything that happens in this movie happened in the reason that it shows, right? And a lot of things happened in real life that weren't in the movie. And the reason that is because the director had a specific tone he was going for. He wanted it to be kind of dark and ominous and making this Facebook thing kind of seem sketchy and interesting and also make Zuckerberg kind of look like in a negative light. And that's cool and all, but if you're changing it to fit the tone of your movie, if the tone of your movie is a predetermined tone and you're trying to make an educational movie, it isn't going to work in terms of it being educational, right? Because say you are asking a question in an interview, right? And you ask a leading question. That is a question that, is begging them to reply. It'd be like, hey, do you think that teachers are bad at teaching because they have their own point of view? That is a very leading question. Would you say that is true? And I feel like this movie asks a lot of leading questions, and that's kind of an issue with me, is that if you go out thinking, hey, I want to make a dark Facebook movie, then your movie isn't going to be as educational if you were like, hey, I want to make a movie about Facebook. So I think that a tone has a lot to do with how a movie is educational or is not educational. I think that tone has everything to do with that. And it's important to know that if you're making an educational movie, things are going to change during the process, right? You can't go in saying, I want the movie to feel like this, if you do the research and realize, oh, it isn't really like that, but I'm going to make the movie anyway. That's kind of the problem I have with The Social Network. The last movie that I want to talk about in particular is The Wolf of Wall Street. Now, this is really interesting because I learned quite a bit about, being a salesman and all that kind of thing. And it's based on a true story, so it is real. But there's a couple issues with it. For one, it's rated R, very rated R. It's very rated R. And I find that interesting because it's an educational movie for adults. And I don't know if that's either a good thing or a bad thing. I also, I learned a lot of cool things, but also it's a 3-hour movie. And there are times where, it's not an educational movie and it's just a comedy. And I don't know if that helped or didn't help. I think that comedy can be used to teach. I really do. I think that it works really well. People are going to remember it because it's funny. But in terms of how educational it is, I don't know if it's going to help. I don't think it will. I think it actually does hinder it a little bit because it does stray the focus of the film a little bit from the educational value of learning about how to be learn about this particular, salesman, and leans towards it being a comedy. And I think that it has to strike a good balance, and this one just wasn't as balanced as I think it could have been, The last little thing that I want to talk about here is documentaries, right? Documentaries are almost always going to be trustworthy. And I say almost always because there are lots of times where you'll watch a documentary and be like, that's just not true. And this can be for a variety of reasons. One, the director or researcher didn't research enough. Okay, which is possible because, we've all written an essay and didn't have enough time to finish the essay, and we just kind of made up facts, okay? We've all done that. It's true. And, it's not even necessarily wrong, it's just true. And the other thing, and probably probably the one that's the most probable, is it's dated, right? If I were to watch a movie about climate change from 20 years ago, it's going to be different than it is now. And I think that it is important to know when you do watch a documentary, know when it was made. That is incredibly important. And take everything with a grain of salt, knowing that this movie was made like 10, 20 years ago. Things might have changed by now. And I think that's the issue with making educational movies nowadays, is things are changing so rapidly. Like, if I were to make a video, if I were to make a, this is a great example, if I were to make a documentary about Donald Trump 10 years ago, it'd be a lot different than if I were to make a documentary about Donald Trump today. And I think it's important that we realize that, yeah, it can still be educational, but still be dated and wrong. So I think that it's interesting that plays a part. But I think it's going to sum up my questions here. I do want to know what you guys think. What do you guys think about educational movies? Are they educational? Should we trust them? And in what ways can directors shape movies to make them directly educational for, either kids or adults? And to what extent does making it for a certain age group matter? To what extent do you think tone matters for these movies? I want to know your thoughts on the comments below. I do want to know, and I'd like to make a part 2 of this at some point in the future. Just like going through the comments and answering all the questions. I will type a response, but I do want to make a video about it to share with everyone, and I am interested in knowing what you guys think. And this is just a video I made because I was interested in thinking about it, because I was thinking about The Social Network the other day, and I was like, I really want to talk about it, and this is a good excuse to do so. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please consider subscribing if you want more of this. I do make Robert's Thoughts episodes almost every weekend, and they're all interesting little things that I think are fun to talk about. So if you guys want to subscribe, that'd be great. Like the video, share with your friends, and as always, keep watching movies and television, stay educated, and I'll see you guys in the next video.